Hey everybody, today on a DM's Guide to Dragonlance, we have escaped Pax Tharkas, but we're not safe yet, and we have a lot of people in tow. Up next. Well, greetings everybody. This is a DM's Guide to Dragonlance, and I am your host, Paul, the Techno Funk Boy. I really appreciate you hanging out with me today. We've finished up in Pax Tharkas, and now we're heading south, and we have now drifted out of the range of the first books of the Chronicles. This is an adventure that does not appear in the original novels, but does appear in the Lost Chronicles. I actually reviewed the book that this adventure appears in, and I'll go ahead and link it up here. That it was pretty fun. This is going to be a really fun adventure. So a couple of things before we begin. January is kind of half my month off, and so we're going to do some videos this month, but not a ton. But we're going to be coming back in early February with a lot of videos upcoming. We might be at 500 subs by next month, by the time we really start getting rolling again. And so there's going to be hopefully a couple of things that we get to do to celebrate, but I really appreciate y'all. And if you are here and you're not subscribed, please do consider hitting that subscribe button, hit the little bell icon to be notified of upcoming videos. And really the best thing that you can do to support the channel is that, but share it with some friends, especially if you have some Dragonlance loving friends. If you have a dungeon master who wants to run this game, please let them know about the channel here. But let's get rolling on this. We are in Dragons of Hope, which is DL3. This is the third of the original Dragonlance modules. This was collected. We're still in Classics Volume 1. All of these books are available on like Drive-Thru RPG. The most cost-effective way of getting like the early editions, the original editions, is the Classics volumes. They've compiled them into three volumes, each with 4 modules in it, and it's pretty cheap. I also really do recommend the 3.5 version. This is just called Dragons of Autumn. It is a little bit more pricey, but you get a third edition perspective on things, and there's a lot of actually really, really good ideas in these books that I use quite a bit. And today is going to be actually one of those days, because we are getting into the Tharkadan Mountains south of Pax Tharkas. We're trying to find that old dwarven kingdom that has been lost to time, that no one has been in since the Dwarfgate Wars 280-ish years ago. And we have all of the refugees from Pax Tharkas in tow. Now, here's what I'm going to let you know is we're going to go through this module and kind of pick out some things and kind of explore how to dungeon master this kind of hefty section of the books. And if you are a player who has not experienced this module, now's the time that I would suggest that you bow out, but I would ask that you send your dungeon master this way, because we are going to spoil the snot out of this particular section. This whole book I really liked. it. Tracy Hickman is the one who designed this section. It's really good stuff, and this section is very, very cool and interesting. It is also very, very difficult to run. And so if you are planning to DM this segment of the game, I really suggest that there be a few things that you just go ahead and really prep on. The first thing is that all of the refugees have split off into different factions, and there is a leader of each faction, and each of these factions have a different approach to you. And in fact, 2 of the factions are not going to side with you ever because they don't like you. But the other ones can be persuaded. They can be, you can talk to them, you can reason with them. There's a lot that you can do with these leaders to get them either to see things your way or to make them angry. And so there is a political element to this whole thing. The second thing is attrition rates, because every event, every day that goes by is going to bring about a chance to lose people from the refugees. And the longer you spend in these mountains, the worse it's going to get. And so there's several different mechanics in the books on keeping track of these things. Go ahead and get these ready. Because these are all these things that you're like, you very well could like be like flipping through the books, like, oh goodness, where is that thing? Write down copies of them, make photocopies of them, make yourself a special DM screen for this one, because there's a lot here. Food is also a thing. So this is the main problem. We are now in mountains. We don't know where to go, and we have limited amount of food. Now, the refugees brought with them several carriages of food, but there's also several hundred of them, and that you're going to need to live off the land to do that. And that means planning hunts, collecting, if you find an area with a lot of vegetation, is exploring that, seeing what you can get out of these things, and keeping track of the food. Then there's also time, because there is a time limit. The players don't necessarily know this, but the longer you spend in these mountains, the harder this whole book is going to end up being. Now, the players can get very, very, very lost in here very, very quickly. And this is one place where I think the books aren't giving you enough clues. So there's a couple of places where you can get some information on where you're supposed to go and where you can leave the refugees, where they'll be safe and they will have food. But if you start heading in a different direction, then you might completely miss those groups for literal weeks. This is essentially a dungeon, but it's a wide open dungeon, and it's a mountain range, and you're going to spend days, 2 weeks in this mountain range, trying to find a safe place, trying to find a place where the refugees can get food, and trying to figure out a way to get into the dwarven kingdom of Thorbard. There's a lot to do, and if your party quite accidentally goes in the wrong direction on day one, that might be the decision that spells disaster for the party. And so my suggestion up front, and this is the way I ran it, is if your party has any kind of reasonable plan on finding something defensible, give it to them. Just give it to them. Don't wait for the book to tell you to give them more information. So my party decided very early on to follow rivers. Hey, that made a lot of sense to me, because the rivers are going to be where the vegetation is. And if what we're looking for is what's called in the book the hopeful vale, that this place that they're going to be hidden, but they can still survive. That's going to be irrigated essentially. And so that made a lot of sense to me. And so I started steering them in that direction. My party really utilized speak with animals and speak with plants. And so I went ahead and gave them information about what was, within reason. I mean, the squirrel is not going to know what's going on 20 miles away, but, they might know about that stone giant that's over there or something like that. And so if my players had an idea that would net them good information, I typically gave it to them. In that way, they didn't just by sheer chance go in a way that was going to shipwreck their campaign, which is totally possible to do here. Now, the way this is set up is you have, as the dungeon master, you have a big map, and it's got little markers on it of encounters, and there are a lot of encounters. And guess what? The encounters in first edition and that 3.5 edition, sometimes different. They're sometimes different, and so like I went through, and there were some in the first edition that I didn't like that much, but I thought there were some really cool ideas in the 3.5 edition. And so I kind of just made a mesh of both of them and picked out my favorite ones. But in general, you can play this one of two ways. You can go by the book, in which case you are going to learn about a lot of mini encounters, most of which your party are not going to see. Or you can pick your favorite ones and make sure your party sees them. Whichever way they go, they're going to encounter, like if they go the long way, they'll get more encounters, but my favorite ones, definitely they're going to see. Or you can move all of those really good ones over by their goal. There are different ways that you can the party can figure out that Skullcap is where they need to go for the secret to get into Thorbarden. Thankfully, my party found those, but this is another case where that really could be missed. And so look for opportunities to bring that in. The way the book does it, and this is the Lost Chronicles, is that Fistandantilus kind of takes over Raistlin as he's preparing his spell books, and Raistlin writes down Skullcap without realizing he did it. Now, I am playing with the Fistandantilus subplot in my campaign, so I did the same thing. I like that scene, and it also, and my wizard is black robed, and so like those factions of the group that don't like the party, they're using the fact that she's black robed to really kind of insult the party in front of everybody. It's like, what are you going to trust this black robed wizard? And her bringing up Skullcap was an opportunity for their enemies to really kind of sow doubt in the minds of everybody else. And so there are opportunities there, but look for opportunities to point them in the right direction, because once they find a place for the refugees to stay, then they're going to need to go to Skullcap, which will be the subject of our next video. What else is going on here? There's the option to having encounters against the Draconians or even the dragons. Now, keep in mind, like if you're going by the book, Verminard is not dead here like he is in the novels. And so as there's depending on whether they collapsed the gate at Pax Tharkas or not, is how quickly the Draconians will be coming after them. And so if they didn't collapse that gate, then the Draconians are going to be able to come through into the trail much more quickly. Whereas if they collapsed it, then there's going to be several days while basically, Verminard is trying to, dig his army up out of the dust and get them on the right side of the gate. There are special roles for that because we're talking about like armies of hundreds against Draconians of hundreds here, right? And so there are special roles for that's going to kind of tell us quickly, without playing out, blow for blow these battles, what the result is and how many people we lost. if the the longer they stay in like I mentioned earlier, the longer they stay in these mountains, the worse it can be for the party. And the more people they lose, the more they're going to lose the trust of the faction leaders, which is going to cause it's going to cause them, kind of political strife as we go. So it's a lot. There's a lot going on here. I think that this section is fantastic, but as a DM, you need to kind of keep an eye on it to see if it's going to work well. My party rolled exceptionally well, and made it through this section fairly easily. I would have amped up the difficulty. If I were to do it again, I would amp up the difficulty a little bit more. On the other hand, with the faction thing, it is like there's 2 factions are going to be against the party no matter what. And a couple of factions are like already on the fence, and there's not a lot of way to gain trust, and there's a lot of ways to lose trust. I do think that's a little too hard. Like, I think it's way too easy because, in all seriousness, these leaders are going to blame the party for every single death. And so, those couple of factions that are on the fence very easily can fall to mistrusting the party very, very quickly. That I was more generous with that, and I'm glad I was, because this is where things can really, really get difficult for the party, especially if maybe they took a couple of wrong turns. They're in the mountains a little bit longer than they should have. Now they've got all the leaders against them that are working against them. They're not taking any of their advice, and the campaign really can kind of grind to a halt here and be very, very go from like very triumphant coming out of Pax Tharkas to frustrating. And I did want my game to be more difficult than it turned out being. So when I do run this again, the difficulty will be amped up a little bit from the way I played it. But there's certain things that I think are tilted against the players from page 1 that I think ultimately could very much frustrate them if you don't give them opportunities to regain trust. And as a DM, that's totally what you can do. Is if they're starting to lose the leaders, give them an encounter that's going to allow them to find some food, that's going to allow them to find a safe place to rest. And this can warm the hearts of the faction leaders again in your favor. And so the dungeon master has a lot to do in this one, more so than pretty much any of the other sections that I've played so far. Very, very, very much a DM heavy section. And so my best advice, go ahead and read both versions. Take what you like from each one. Figure out your the way you're going to handle your factions, the way you're going to handle attrition, the way you're going to handle food and time, and make yourself cheat sheets and just be ready with those, so that you have the roll tables in front of you and ready to go. Getting through this section. This is a section that can be done in a single session, or it could take several. And if your players are smart about it and figure out the right way, it can be done quickly, and it can be a lot of fun. If they go the wrong way, it still can be a lot of fun, but it'll take longer. So get ready. This is so fun. This is this whole. I should mention, Dragons of Hope, I think, is a very, very, very good module. Whereas the previous one was a little railroady at the beginning, like this is the exact opposite. It's like, here's a mountain range. Go do your thing. You know, and I really like this one. I like the whole thing, and so we are going to get into Skull Cap, which I think is a pretty fantastic dungeon. Next time, as a reminder, I will have at least one more, hoping 2 more videos in January. But this is my off month, and so I won't be as many, but February, about the second week of February, is when I'm back on everything, and so we'll be hammering away on this. And so if you enjoyed this video, please do hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and put a comment. Also, that actually really helps me. That lets YouTube know that this video is worth showing to other people. The link to my Discord is down below, and where you can see the recap of a couple of us are recapping every time we do a session in Dragonlance. We're recapping our adventures there, which is a lot of fun, and you can chat with us on Dragonlance, on tabletop role playing in general, video games, or any of that good jazz. So I really do appreciate it, and we'll catch you next time. Thank you.